What's up, what's up, what's up? Today, our first rating video. Are you excited? I'm excited. The Silver Eyes, Five Nights at Freddy's. First, before we get into anything, we're going to do a tea taste test because I've not tried these yet. So, I have these two. Let me get the packaging. So first, we have this one. I showed you these earlier. This is the white berry tea. Cheers. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Ooh, that is yummy. And then this one. Did I try that one? Ooh, that is yummy. That is yummy. I didn't put any sugar in them, but it's okay. Okay. I'm so excited to do reading videos for you. I've been wanting to do a reading video for you. So I'm so excited I get the chance to do this. Okay, let's get started. Five Nights at Freddy's, The Silver Eyes. Hold on, let me pretend to be the... Wait, no, let me get to the page. Wait, look, I'm the loading screen. I'm the loading screen. Okay. Chapter 1. Chapter 1. He sees me. Charlie dropped to her hands and knees. She was wedged behind a row of arcade games, crammed in the crawl space between the consoles and the wall. Tangled electrical cords and I'm already off to a bad start. Tangled electrical cords and useless plugs strewn beneath her. She was cornered. The only way out was past the thing, and she wasn't fast. Oh my gosh, and she wasn't fast enough to make it. She can see him stalking back and forth, catching flickers of movement through the gaps between the games. There was scarcely enough room to move, but she tried to crawl backward. Her foot caught on a cord. She stopped, contorting herself to carefully dislodge it. She heard the clash of metal on metal, and the farthest console rocked back against the wall. He hit it again, shattering the display, then attacked the next, crashing against them. Let me get a couple sips. Okay. Almost rhythmically, tearing through the machinery, coming closer. I have to get out. I have to. The panic thought was of no help. There was no way out. Her arm ached, and she wanted to sob aloud. Blood soaked through the tattered bandage, and it seemed as though she could feel it draining out of her. The console a few feet away crashed against the wall, and Charlie flinched. He was getting closer. She could hear the grinding of gears and the clicking of servos. Servos? Servos? Ever louder. Eyes closed, she could still see the way he looked at her, see the matted fur and the exposed metal beneath the synthetic flesh. Suddenly, the console in front of her was wrenched away. It toppled over, thrown down like a toy. The power cords beneath her hands and knees were yanked away, and Charlie slipped, almost falling. She caught herself and looked up just in time to see the downward swing of a hook. Foxy. Welcome to Hurricane, Utah. Charlie's... Is that what he says? What does a pirate sound like? Welcome to Hurricane, Utah. That's not a pirate. What does a pirate sound? Charlie smiled wearily at the sign and kept driving. Oh, I don't think it is. I think that was a flashback, and I think this is now. She saw a sign that said, "Welcome to Hurricane, Utah." Charlie smiled wearily at the sign and kept driving. The world didn't look any different from one side of the sign to the other, but she felt a nervous anticipation as she passed it. She didn't recognize anything. Then again, she hadn't really expected to. Not this far at the edge of town where all... No! No! Oh my gosh. Why this isn't fair? Whatever. Hold on, let me just leave so I can finish your video. Life isn't fair. Anyways, I'm not gonna call you back yet so I can finish this. Then again, she hadn't really expected to. Not this far at the edge of town were all the highway and empty space. She wondered what the others would look like, who they were now. 10 years ago, they'd been best friends, and then it happened, and everything ended. At least for Charlie. She hadn't seen any of them since she was 7 years old. They had written all the time as kids, especially Marla, who wrote like she talked, fast and incoherent. But as they got older, they had grown apart. The letters had grown fewer and further between, and the conversations leading up to this trip had been perfunctory and full of awkward pauses. Charlie repeated their names as though to reassure herself that she still remembered them. Marla, Jessica, Lamar, Carlton, John, and Michael. Michael, don't leave me here. Michael mentioned? Michael was the reason for this trip. After all, it was 10 years since he died. 10 years since it happened. And now his parents wanted them all together for the dedication ceremony. They wanted all his old friends there when they announced the scholarship they were creating in his name. Charlie knew it was a good thing to do, but the gathering felt so slightly macabre. Felt slightly macabre. She shivered and turned down the air conditioning, even though she knew it was not the cold. As she drove into the town center, Charlie began to recognize things. A few stores and the movie theater, which was now advertising the summer's blockbuster hit. She felt a brief moment of surprise, then smiled at herself. What did you expect? The whole place would be unchanged? A monument to the moment of your departure, frozen forever in July 1985? Well, that was exactly what she expected. She looked at her watch, still a few hours to kill before they all met up. She thought about going to the movie, but she knew what she really wanted to do. Charlie made a left turn and headed out of town. 10 minutes later, she pulled to a stop and got out. The house loomed up before her, its dark outline a wound in the bright blue sky. Charlie leaned back against the car, slightly dizzy. She took a moment to steady herself with deep breaths. She had known it would be there. An illicit look through her aunt's bank books a few years before had told her that the mortgage was paid off and that Aunt Jen was still paying property taxes. It had only been 10 years. There was no reason it should have changed at all. Charlie climbed the steps slowly, taking in the peeling paint. The third stair had a loose board, and the rose bushes had taken over one side of the porch. Their thorns biting hungrily into the wood. The door was locked, but Charlie still had her key. She had never actually used it. As she took it from around her neck, she slid it into the lock. She remembered her father putting its chain around her neck. Like Attack on Titan. Like... Oh my god, where was I? She remembered her father putting it around her neck. In case you ever need... Wait, this is him. In case you ever need it. Well, she needed it now. The door opened easily, and Charlie looked around. She didn't remember much about the first couple of years here. She'd only been 3 years old, and all the memories had faded together in the blur of child's grief and loss, of not understanding why her mother had to go away. Clinging to her father every moment, not trusting the world around her unless he was there, unless she was holding tightly to him, burying herself in his flannel shirts and the smell of grease and hot metal and him. The stairs stretched straight up in front of her, but she did not move directly towards them. Instead, she went into the living room where all the furniture was still in place. She had not really noticed as a child, but the house was a little too large for the furniture they had. Things were spread out too widely in order to fill the space. The coffee table was too far from the couch to reach. The easy chair was too far across the room to carry on a conversation. There was a dark stain on the wooden floorboards near the center of the room. Charlie stepped around it quickly and went into the kitchen, where the cupboards held only a few pots, pans, and dishes. Charlie had never felt a lack of anything as a child, but it seemed now that the unnecessary enormity of the house was a sort of apology. The attempt of a man who had lost so much to give his daughter what he could. He'd always had a way of overdoing what he did. The last time she was there, the house had been dark and everything felt wrong. She was carried up the stairs to her bedroom, although she was 7 years old and could have gone quicker on her own 2 feet. Okay, hold on. But Aunt Jen had stopped on the front porch, picked her up, and carried her, shielding her face as though she was a baby in the glaring sun. In her room, Aunt Jen set Charlie down and closed the bedroom door behind them. She told her to pack her suitcase, and Charlie had cried because all her things could never fit into the small case. "We can come back for the rest later," Aunt Jen said, her impatience leaking through as Charlie hovered indecisively at her dresser, trying to decide which t-shirt to bring along. They'd never come back for the rest. Charlie mounted the stairs, heading to her old bedroom. The door was partially cracked, and as she opened it, she had a giddy feeling of displacement, as though her younger self might be sitting there among her toys. I looked up and asked, "Charlie, who are you?" Charlie went in. Like the rest of the house, her bedroom was untouched. The walls were pale pink, and the ceiling, which sloped dramatically on one side to follow the line of the roof, was painted to match. Her old bed still stood against the wall beneath a large window. The mattress was still intact, though the sheets were gone. The window was cracked, slightly open, and rotting lace curtains waved in the gentle breeze from outside. There was a dark water stain in the paint beneath the window where the weather had gotten in over the years, betraying the house's neglect. Charlie climbed onto the bed and forced the window shut. It obeyed with a screech, and Charlie stepped back and turned her attention to the rest of the room, to her father's creations. Their first night in the house, Charlie had been afraid to sleep alone, but she did not remember the night, but her father had told her about it often enough that the story had taken on the quality of memory. She sat up and wailed until her father came to find her, until he scooped her up and held her and promised her that he would make sure she was never alone again. The next morning, he took her by the hand and led her to the garage, where he set to work keeping that promise. The first of his inventions was a purple rabbit. Purple rabbit! Now gray with age from the years of sitting in the sunlight. Her father had named him Theodore. Theodore! He was the size of a 3-year-old child. Her size at the time. He had a plush fur, shining eyes, and a dapper red bow tie. He didn't do much, only waved a hand, tilted his head to the side, and said in her father's voice, "I love you, Charlie." But it was enough to give her a night watcher, someone to keep her company when she could not sleep. Right now, Theodore sat in a white wicker chair in the far corner of the room. Charlie waved at him, but not activated, he did not wave back. After Theodore, the toys got more complex. Some worked and some did not. Some seemed to have permanent glitches, while others simply did not appeal to Charlie's childish imagination. She knew her father took those back to his workshop and recycled them for parts. She did not like to watch them be dismantled, but the ones that were kept, those she loved, they were here now, looking at her expectantly, smiling. Charlie pushed a button beside her bed. It gave way stiffly, but nothing happened. She pushed it again, holding it down longer, and this time, across the room, and with a weary creak of metal on metal, the unicorn began to move. The unicorn, Charlie had named him Stanley for some reason she could no longer remember, was made of metal and had been painted glossy white. He trundled around the room on a circular track, bobbing his head stiffly up and down. The track squealed as Stanley rounded the corner and came to a stop beside the bed. Charlie knelt beside him on the floor and patted his flank. His glossy paint was chipped and peeling, and his face had given over to rust. His eyes were lively, glazing out of the decay. "You need a new coat of paint, Stanley," Charlie said. The unicorn stared ahead, unresponsive. At the foot of the bed there was a wheel, made of patched-together metal. It had always reminded her of something she might find on a submarine. Charlie turned it. It stuck for a moment, then gave way, rotating as it always did. And across the room, the smallest closet door swung open. Out sailed Ella on her track, a child-sized doll bearing a teacup and saucer in her tiny hands like an offering. Ella's plaid dress was still crisp, and her patent leather shoes still shone. Perhaps the closet had protected her from damage of the damp. Charlie had an identical outfit back when she and Ella were the same height. "Hi, Ella," she said softly. As the wheel unwound, Ella retreated to the closet again, the door closing behind her. Charlie followed her. The closet had been built to align with the slant of the ceiling, and there were 3 of them. Ella lived in the short one, which was about 3.5 feet tall. Next to it was one a foot taller or so, and a third closet to the bedroom door. She was the same height as. Hold on, let me reread that. The closets have been built to align with the slant of the ceiling, and there were 3 of them. Ella lived in the short one, which was about 3.5 feet tall. Next to it was one a foot or so taller, and a third closest to the bedroom door was the same height as the rest of the room. She smiled, remembering. Why do you have 3 closets? John had demanded the first time he came over. She looked at him blankly, confused by the question. Wait, no, that's John saying it. Why do you have 3 closets? John had demanded in the first time he came over. She looked at him blankly, confused by the question. 'Cause that's how many there are. 'Cause that's how many there are, she said finally. She pointed defensively to the littlest one. That one's Ella's anyways, she added. John nodded, satisfied. Charlie shook her head and opened the door to the middle closet, or tried to. The knob stopped with a jolt. It was locked. She rattled it a few times, but gave up without much conviction. She stayed crouched low to the floor and glanced up at the tallest closet, her big girl closet. That she would someday grow into. You won't need it until you're big. Oh, you won't need it until you're bigger, her father would say. But that day never came. The door now hung open slightly, but Charlie didn't disturb it. It hadn't opened for her. It had only given way to time. As she moved to the stand, she noticed something shiny, half hidden under the rim of the locked middle door. She leaned forward to pick it up. It looked like a broken off piece of circuit board. She smiled slightly. Nuts, bolts, scraps, and parts had turned up all over the place. Once upon a time, her father had... Oh, never mind. She smiled slightly. Nuts, bolts, scraps, and parts had turned up all over the place once upon a time. Her father always had... Oh my gosh. Her father always had stray parts in his pockets. He would carry around something he was working on, set it down, and forget where it was. Or worse, put something aside for safekeeping, never to be seen again. There was also a strand of her hair clinging to it. She unwound it carefully from the tiny lip of the metal it was stuck on. Finally, as though she had been putting it off, Charlie crossed the room to pick up Theodore. His back had not faded in the sun like the front of his body, and it was the same rich, dark purple she remembered. She pressed the button at the base of his neck, but he remained lifeless. His fur was threadbare, one ear hanging loose by a single rotted thread, and through the hole she could see the green plastic of his circuit board. Charlie held her breath, listening fearfully for something. Ole mole, the rabbit said with a barely audible halting noise. And Charlie set him down, her face hot and her chest pinched tight. She had not really expected to hear her father's voice again. I love you too. Oh, that's supposed to be I love you? Ole mole. Charlie looked around the room. When she was a child, it had been her own magical world, and she was possessive of it. Only a few chosen friends were ever allowed inside. She went to her bed and set Stanley moving on his track again. She left, closing the door behind her before a little unicorn came to a halt. She went out the back door to the driveway and stopped in front of the garage that had been her father's workshop, half buried in the gravel. A few feet away was a piece of metal, and Charlie went to pick it up. It was jointed in the middle, and she held it in her hand, smiling a little as she bent it back and forth. An elbow joint. An elbow joint, she said. I wonder who that was going to belong to. She had stood in the exact same spot many times before. She closed her eyes, and the memory overwhelmed her. She was a little girl again, sitting on the floor of her father's workshop, playing with scraps of wood and metal as though they were toy blocks, trying to build a tower with the uneven pieces. The shop was hot, and she was sweaty, grime sticking to her legs as she sat in her shorts and sneakers. She could almost smell the sharp metallic odor of the soldering iron. Her father was nearby, never out of sight, working on Stanley the unicorn. Stanley's face was still unfinished, one side white and shining and friendly, with a gleaming brown eye that seemed to almost see. The other half of the toy's face was all exposed, circuit boards and metal parts. Charlie's father looked at her and smiled, and she smiled back. Beloved. In a darkened corner behind her father, barely visible, hung a jumble of metal limbs, a twisted skeleton with burning silver eyes. Every once in a while, it gave an uncanny twitch. Charlie tried to never look at it, but as her father worked, as she played with her makeshift toys, her eye was drawn back to it again and again. The limbs contoured, seemed almost mocking the thing, a ghastly gesture, and yet there was something about it that suggested enormous pain. "Daddy," Charlie said, and her father did not look up from his work. "Daddy," she said again, more urgently this time. He turned to her slowly, as though not fully present with the world. What do you need? What do you need, sweetie?" She pointed at the metal skeleton. "Does it hurt?" She wanted to ask the question, but she looked into her father's eyes. She found she could not. She shook her head. "Nothing." He nodded at her with an absent smile and went back to his work behind him. The creature gave another awful twitch, and its eyes still burned. Charlie shivered and drew herself back to the present. She glanced behind her, feeling exposed. She looked down, and her gaze fixed on something. 3 widely spaced grooves in the ground. She knelt, thoughtful, and ran her fingers over one of them. The gravel was scattered away, the marks worn heavily into the dirt. A camera tripod of some sort. It was the first unfamiliar thing she'd seen. The door to the workshop was cracked open slightly, inviting, but she felt no desire to go inside. Quickly, she headed back to her car, but she stopped as soon as she settled into the driver's seat. Her keys were gone, having probably fallen out of her pocket somewhere inside the house. She retracted her steps, merely glancing into the living room and kitchen before heading up to the bedroom. The keys were on the wicker chair beside Theodore the rabbit. She picked them up and jangled them for a moment, not quite ready to leave the room behind. She sat down on the bed. Stanley the unicorn had stopped beside the bed as he always did, and as she sat, she patted him absently on the head. It had grown dark while she was outside, and the room was now cast in shadows. Somehow, without the bright sunlight, the toy's flaws and deterioration were thrown into sharp relief. Theodore's eyes were no longer stone, and his thin fur and hanging ear made him look like. And his thin fur and hanging ear made him look like a sickly vagabond. When she looked down at Stanley, the rust around his eyes made them look like hollow sockets, and his bare teeth, which she had always thought of as a smile, became the awful, knowing grin of a skull. Charlie stood up, careful not to touch him, and hurried towards the door, but her foot caught on a whip beside the bed. She tripped on the tracks and fell, sprawling out on the floor. We're almost halfway done with this chapter. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun reading this. I'm sorry if my reading sucks. I'm doing my best, and I'm sorry if this sucks, but I'm doing my best. And if I keep reading and do reading videos, hopefully it gets better. Ugh, it's kind of nasty. It's kind of nasty now. It's cold. They're cold. They're not even helping. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Sprawled on the floor. There was a whir of spinning metal. As she raised her head, a small pair of feet appeared under her nose. I feel like I'm reading so bad. Like I feel like because I'm having troubles with with my dyslexia. I have troubles with comprehension and just words being mixed around and all that. Endings of sentences are hard because I don't know, I just blur all the sentences together, I feel like. So hopefully it's not so bad. I don't know, I'm sorry. But I'm having fun. There was a whir of spinning metal, and as she raised her head, a small pair of feet appeared under her nose. Clad in shining patent leather. She looked up above where she looked up. There above her was Ella, staring down at her, silent and uninviting. Her glassy eyes almost appeared to see. The teacup and saucer were held out before her with a military stiffness. Charlie got up cautiously, taking care not to disturb the doll. She left the room, stepping carefully to avoid accidentally activating any other toys. As Charlie went, Ella retreated to her closet, almost matching her pace. Charlie hurried down the stairs, seized by an urgency to get away. In the car, she fumbled the key 3 times before sliding into place. Go, go, go. Oh, I lost where I was at. I can't look away. She backed too fast down the driveway, running recklessly over the grass of the front yard, and sped away. After about a mile, Charlie pulled over on a shoulder and turned the car off, staring straight ahead through the windshield, her eyes focused on nothing. She forced herself to breathe slowly. She reached up and adjusted the rearview mirror so she could see herself. I know I said I was going to read the whole chapter, but it's already at 35 minutes, and I think my dyslexia is getting to a point now where none of this is just making sense. And I still have 15 more pages to go. So, I'm sure you don't mind it all though, because you're such a sweetheart, darling, dear Gucci bear. I'll mark that. Page 14. Hope you're enjoying the book so far. I know I am. The silver eyes. Or. So, It was so amazing reading to you. So amazing reading to you. I had so much fun. Hope you enjoyed the book. And maybe I'll do daily reading videos just so, because I also want to get better at reading. Reading more often would help me get better at like reading comprehension and all of that. So it might be good for me too. So I'll see what I can do. But for my first video, it was fun. I love you so much. I love you very much. I love you so dearly. You're very dear in my heart. And yeah. Okay. Let me bring you in, take you off this thing. Okay. I love you so much. And I miss you so much. And I want you so much. Okay.